live stream today all about black tie. So I think first question here, and I'll be taking all of these here directly, was Randy Shanofsky. Is it true that customs suggests that one shouldn't wear a wristwatch while dressed in a tuxedo? First of all, time, right? Should you wear a timepiece with your tuxedo? It used to be the case that people said, when you are in company of other people, it would be impolite to look at your watch, which could be, was initially your pocket watch or your wristwatch, because it would imply that you're not enjoying your time, you're not having a good time, and you look at your watch because you want to see, how long you still have to endure the situation here. So it is, because of that, perfectly fine to not wear a wristwatch or watch with your outfit. So today, I'm not wearing any watch with my black tie outfit, and that's totally fine. Now, over time, people started wearing watches more, and I think today, you can see people with a dive watch showing up in a tuxedo, maybe with like a black face or navy blue or something, because they think it's cool. Historically, that would not have been the case. You would have worn a kind of, more like a simple, like a Calatrava, or like a very simple wristwatch, a flat, gold, round, something like that. I think today people, want to express themselves in a way, and they can, but the choice is up to you. So no, having something custom doesn't mean you cannot wear a wristwatch, but there was some truth in your question there. Elisha La Plaza, I hope I pronounced that right. Can you explain the difference and maybe some origins of 13s and 14s black single-breast tuxedos, and why some have vests and some have cummerbunds? Okay, well, if you want the full story, we have this in-depth black tie guide on our website that is the most thorough in the world. So if you want to really dive deep, I suggest you go there. Now, the tuxedo, used to be the equivalent of, like, let's say, a tracksuit today, right? It was the kind of less formal way for someone to show up in the evening. There's a cool scene in Downton Abbey where, the Dowager Countess tells her son, "Oh, Robert, I thought you were a waiter," because the waiter would wear the black bow tie, and that made him a waiter, and you would wear a white tie with a tailcoat, and then as it got, people felt, it was like the Duke of Windsor, he liked everything to be softer. So he's like, I don't like the boiled shirt fronts. So he wanted a shirt not with a stiff collar, but a turn down collar, right? And so you had the tuxedo became this kind of casual way for people to do evening wear. And so initially, some of them would wear the white the white waistcoat that was stiffer, right? And then over time, people said, well, it's a little stiffer. Maybe I go with a cummerbund, because the idea was that the cummerbund covers the transition of the pants to the shirt. So you would not see this kind of, undecorated waistband, because it's not okay to wear a belt with a tuxedo. And if you have a belt underneath your cummerbund, you may see a little bit of bulging. So most people therefore wear, like, suspenders, or they wear nothing, because the pants have side adjusters. And so, yeah, that's how things evolved. Again, if you want more detail, you can check that out. Okay, let's see here. What's the minimum formality option for a black shoe? Trying to avoid patent leather since it would rarely be used. Is it slide broken completely out of the question? Yes. I would say if you go, the classic would be the capless black Oxford, right? So not the cap toe, but without the cap. I think these days it's easier to find actual black hole cuts. And yes, I would not add any medallion or any broguing to it. So if you feel like patent leather doesn't get enough use, patent leather oftentimes, what they also come, the shoes, they have a much thinner sole, which is something to keep in mind. But you see here, it's an Oxford. It has the regular kind of top piece, but it's capless. That's what you want. And the toe shape, it can be rounder. If you go to like Austria, they also wear like derbies, with a plain toe, which works. It's a very clean, clean surface. And if you don't go with patent leather, try to really shine up your shoes so you get that sheen that's more like associated with evening wear. Big R in the house, indeed. Can you wear a top hat with black tie if you wear evening overcoat and cape? No, and the reason is, the idea was that if you wear a white tie tailcoat, you have a longer tail, and to keep things proportional, you wear a top hat to make it longer. So it's like wearing a tailcoat, wear a top hat. That's true for morning coat, for tailcoat, evening coat. So it's like if you go long in the back, you go long on top. With a tuxedo, you do not have that, so you don't wear the top hat. Appropriate ways would be, you can wear a bowler hat, you can wear a Homburg. These are more, the formal types of hats. I would think, people would even wear a fedora today, and they look better than most people in black tie. So yeah. Cocoa Bowler Cowboy. I do not most of the time wear a watch. Good. How can I stop my studs from coming out of my shirt? Am I able to make my buttonholes smaller at home? Asks, who's this? Oh man. Travis Stone. Good question. I think, and if I just take one out here right now, at Fort Belvedere, our studs are made. It's like it's a clip-on mechanism where you put it in like this, and then you flip it over like that. And the idea is that this and this, holds it in. If you find that your shirts come undone, then yes, I would say make the buttonhole smaller. It's very simple. You just, add stitches so the hole is smaller, and therefore it's less likely for the stud to come out. There are other mechanisms, older buttons where sometimes there's a spring in there and you have to pull, but over time, the spring may weaken or not work or get jammed. But they're all roughly the same. So yes, that's what you would do. And then here, I'll put them in like that, right? I have them like this. I put them in here, and I flip them over, and that would be it. So Ross N says, I bought a second-hand tuxedo from Brioni. How do I work out what cummerbund and bow tie to get? Well, traditionally, if you have the facing, right? The facing of the jacket informs typically your choice of bow tie and cummerbund. So the traditional rule is that, if this is satin, then your bow tie should be satin, and your cummerbund should be satin too. Now, not all satin is alike, right? There's when you weave fabric, you have like the warp, and you have the weft, right? And so if you have the warp are the long strands, and then the weft is what you kind of shoot through the end. If you have a higher number of warp threads, it takes longer to set up the machine. I think the quality of the satin is nicer, but it also costs more. That's why most of them are like, weft satins. But that's all, that's more advanced. When you look at it, I would say, most jackets are going to be satin. Now, if you're more advanced, we have other elements. We have, for example, a grosgrain, or it's sometimes also referred to as phi. It's like little ribs. Then you have something called like a barathea, right? And here you see this is more of a navy or midnight blue barathea. So if your lapel facings are, in fact, a navy blue, you could consider going with a similar color. You have satin. It's very smooth, and at Fort Belvedere we use a really high quality, very expensive Italian satin from weavery. They also make fabrics for the Pope, and it's a very high end. There's also barathea, which is this here. You can see barathea is just a little more matte. This is satin, right? A little more shiny in the light. Barathea, a little more matte, more kind of sophisticated elegance. Now, sometimes I have dinner jackets that have like a grosgrain ribbed or a barathea, and maybe I don't have a bow tie that matches it exactly. Then I'll go with something else. And sometimes, you can go very bold. Like, let's say you have like a ribbed lapel, you go with a velvet bow tie. Yeah, one thing we do at Fort Belvedere, and it's very rare, is that we have all of our different bow ties in a fixed neck size, like this, There's no adjuster, so in the evening, when you undo your bow tie, also if you, let's say you wear it with a detachable collar where you can see it, there's no adjuster there, which is really nice. And we offer it in all the different fabrics, and then we also have the cummerbunds in the matching fabric. So no matter if you get a grosgrain or wide rib grosgrain or Barathea, you can do that and get that. So that's how I would go about that. Idaho Gamer 26, what do you think of Tom? Oh man, issues here with my Idaho Gamer. What do you think of Tom Sweeney tuxedos? No first-hand experience, so I can't tell you anything there. Ilya Nozadze, what is more traditional, a cummerbund or a waistcoat? Ivory shawl collar jacket only for summertime or all around the year? Good question. Whether you want a cummerbund or a waistcoat is entirely up to you. Traditionally, evening waistcoats were different though than modern day waistcoats, and I think oftentimes like modern made-to-measure companies, they get it wrong. They basically take a daytime waistcoat and just make it black or in satin and think it's an evening waistcoat, but it's not. Evening waistcoats typically had much deeper cutouts, often like in a U shape, so you would see more the shirt front and the shirt studs, right? Then the second thing they would have is more decorative buttons. Like, think of it, adjustable waistcoat buttons, just like studs, right? So if you look at the old dress sets, they typically would come with 2 or 3 shirt studs, and then 4 waistcoat buttons, and then 2 cufflinks, right? That's what the traditional waistcoat used to be. So when we make the distinction, I would say, that's traditional. The modern day stuff with the V-cut, that's not traditional. That's kind of high cut. That's not what you would do. And cummerbund is, just as traditional. But keep in mind, that cummerbund, the waistcoat was around earlier because with white tie you wore a waistcoat. You didn't wear a cummerbund. The cummerbund came later, and I think cummerbunds are, better for like warmer climates because it removes the layers of fabric that you have. Or if you run hot or if you go dancing, I'd always go with a cummerbund because it's, less fabric, less material, and keeps you cooler. I run hot, so I like to wear that. So that's something to consider. About the ivory dinner jacket, yes, there was a time when people said, oh, ivory, it's only something you would wear during the warmer months of the year, right? And in the US, there's like this no white after Labor Day. Well, guess what, climates have changed. In Minnesota here, where it gets really cold. It's November here. It's still like, 50 degrees outside. Yesterday was 60 degrees, which is about, 16 degrees Celsius, right? It's relatively warm for this time of the year. So I think these old conventions, that used to apply at one point in time should be adapted to modern times. And if you're in a warmer climate, definitely wear an ivory dinner jacket. Now, as with anything, right? Like I'm like, I know all the rules, I've learned all the rules, but I like to play with them. So I don't have an issue wearing, a black watch tartan pair of evening trousers with an ivory cream jacket in the winter when a fire is going. I actually like that kind of just a position and in kind of, taking something, making it different and making it your own. So at the end of the day, it depends on how confidently you wear it. And if someone mentions it and you know the story, it's like you're just adding your own style. Hans Holzer, could you share your thoughts and suggestions on opera pumps and silk socks? Yes, like when you get an opera pump, I think the important thing is that it's cut out deep. Here this is kind of a satin bow, so matches this. We have the evening shoelaces that you can get. They match they match everything, and so you can get all of that. I think what I've seen, the things that are wrong oftentimes with opera pumps is that they're more cut like loafers, where the vamp goes higher up, and you see less of the sock. So if you get an opera pump, make sure it's deeply cut out and it's not a loafer. And then, yeah, silk socks, you wear something that just is either, matches your pants, or you just go contrasty, right? Like today, I'm wearing like, something like that's much brighter. It's just a fun way to do that. Now, what we notice is we have a lot of choice in our black tie selection. And so we thought like, oh, how about, we make certain bundles for people. So if they're unsure, they can confidently buy something and get all the stuff they need. So we launched what we call the black tie bundles. And unfortunately with bundles, there's a lot of products, a lot of sizes. And so we had to create 4 different bundle pages. First of all, we created something which we call the minimalist black tie bundle, which is the bare bones thing that you'll need, right? So let's say you have a double-breasted jacket, dinner jacket, right? And that means you don't need a waistcoat and you also don't need a cover band, because the idea is that you never unbutton it, right? So that's that. And then, you would wear a pocket square, a wide pocket square, but you don't wear a lapel flower, which is, very common for black tie ensembles. But sometimes your dinner jacket doesn't even have a buttonhole like this one. So either you have to add a buttonhole to add a boutonniere, or you just leave it blank. Then you just get the bow tie, the pocket square, white linen pocket square, and then you get the black silk socks. So that's our minimalist bundle. And normally there's going to be like bundle savings, so to speak. Because we're launching these bundles now, you get extra savings that will never come back, right? So this is, think of it as an early Black Friday deal if you wish. But like with all of our launches, you get the best price on launch day or launch week. The launch ends on Sunday of this week, so it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So relatively short window, and then it's gone and will never come back. So the value of this minimalist black tie bundle is $305. Now you get it for $255. Normally it would be $275. Then next in line is the classic black tie bundle, right? That contains a few more things. So you have the bow tie and satin. You have the white pocket square. You have a boutonniere. A mini red carnation. It's like this size. Carnations come in like 2 sizes, so to speak. And we do the mini carnation because it works with most people. This is quite big, so if you have a slim lapel, it may be a little harder. This will work with any lapel, no matter if it's wider or slimmer. And then, black silk socks. You get a satin pair of evening shoelaces, because that really upgrades the look of your shoes. And you get the black satin silk cummerbund, right? So that's something you can do. And normally, all of this together costs like $635. Now you get it for $510. Normally, it will be $30 more, $540. So you're getting special savings there. And then we have, what we call our luxury black tie bundle. Basically, you get the classic black tie bundle, but we're adding the monkey fist knot cufflinks and the matching studs to it, and we're switching out the fabric from satin to barathea. Now, this is more expensive because these cufflinks, are handmade in Germany to like custom jewelry standards. So it's a very high quality product, and so the price for that, normally individually would be $1,795. We're now offering it for $1,400. I can see some people already bought it because it's quite a bit of savings. It's $380 off at least. In this case, it's $395 off. There's 2 different pages for the silver and the gold. Gold is a little more expensive because gold is just more expensive these days. Can't change it, unfortunately. But these are the bundles. So if you're unsure, you can get, a curated package. If you don't want that, if you want different things, you can still, pick and choose whatever you want. But we were trying to help people just feeling more confident about the choice of stuff they get. William Long says, what type of bespoke leather products would a gentleman wear or use during black tie events? Good one. I would say, if you have like a slim wallet, something that doesn't protrude much, but if you go to an event, you want to have a wallet. Sometimes, you need to pay, or you want to be prepared. Maybe you have to tip. I would say get that. I wouldn't necessarily bring like a business card case because it's like an evening event. It's typically not like a business event. You don't want to walk around handing out business cards. If that's your goal, maybe you could bring a case and do so discreetly, but it's typically not the time to do that. Otherwise, I'd say, if you have like let's say a key, right, a little key holder, something like that could be something. Um, if have another way to do it, if you wear like an overcoat, for example, what's really nice is if you have a pair of evening gloves, and we have those in our store. We have evening gloves in all the different sizes, so you get a really good fit, and they're unlined, so they're really thin. They look really elegant, and that is definitely something that upgrades a black tie outfit. Black tie, white tie. If you have that evening overcoat, it just looks very special. Very unique. It's definitely not your pair of work gloves. It's a pair of evening gloves, and it just makes everything come together a lot more neatly. Same with if you want an evening scarf, for example, that makes it all look really, really nice. Yeah, so you could say, why don't you add those to the bundle? We could probably make an even bigger bundle and add the scarves in right now. The problem is with scarves, they all have hand-knotted fringes. So the manufacturer we've worked with so far, they no longer offer that. So we're looking for a different manufacturer right now that can make the scarves to the same standard. There's still a few in stock, so if you want them now is a good time to buy, because it will take a little while to get them otherwise. Baldwin Leatherworks, Ute, asks, any tips? Do you ever get nervous eating in your tuxedo? The reason I ask is because I'd be so afraid I'd spill something or drop food and stain a tux. I'm actually a person, I do get stains on stuff. I eat, and I just accept that that's, part of life. And I remember there was a time when I was a lot more nervous about, getting a stain on something. And I think ever since I've had a child, I just accepted it. You may have your child and she may puke on you, while you do stuff. And I was like, I'd rather spend time with my kid and play with her and accept that than be afraid that something may get stained. So, if something gets stained, there's good cleaning products to remove stains. We have a whole stain removal series. And I think in your mindset, if you try to just say, hey, I'm here to enjoy myself. I'm not here to worry and be afraid all evening of getting a stain on my clothes. Then it's like, you'll dance. And sometimes, I'll dance or do something, and maybe something rips, like here, for example, I just noticed that a button had ripped off for the suspenders, right? I'm like, oh, that happens, but it just means I had a good time, and I don't want my clothes be like a hindrance of me having a good time. I hope that helps. MJ says, have you ever been on a white tie event? Yes, I have. John R. says, when did black tie become a commonly understood phrase? I refer you to the Black Tie Guide for it. I don't have the exact dates and everything know them by heart, but it's all explained there. Let's see here what we got. John says, how does companies like Ralph Lauren, Canali going for lightweight, not the traditional one? Just fabrics have changed over the years. It wasn't possible to do lightweight fabrics. I think it's all about the drape, and it's not just the weight, it's also how it's woven and how it drapes. Like a fresco, for example, in a lighter weight variant, or something, a high twist wool can be really great for evening wear because it doesn't wrinkle. If there's a little bit of mohair, you have a bit of sheen, it's more open weave. And even though it's a heavier fabric, it's maybe like cooler than something that is really fine but has a very tight weave. So it's just, things have changed, and manufacturers do different things. Of course, they want to sell more tuxedos, so they will look at what sells better than other things. Let's see here. Money Changer says, I have a new job, and thankfully I've been given about 4 months notice that a black tie event is coming. Don't want to rent a tux. Any guidance on how to start and cost to expect? Yes, I would start with a tuxedo, and then you can get, like, let's say, a classic black tie bundle, and add that. We also, on the product pages and in our guide, we give you all the things that you definitely need. Like, you need a pair of black evening shoes, right? It could be a black capless Oxford or hole cut that you polish, or it could be patent leather, and you can make the choices. Just like with anything, you can spend, $100 on a pair of black Oxfords, or you can spend, 5,000. So it's a bit hard to tell you what you have to spend, because it depends a bit on where you're at. One thing I always say is, like, if you're on a budget, what you can do is you can look secondhand for stuff. For example, this is what is this, like it's a ketone for Bergdorf Goodman dinner jacket, right? It's very special in the way that it has little white dots, and it's a midnight blue. So to me, as someone, I have the black stuff, I have all that stuff, I want something a little different, so I can pick up a jacket like this for like $250, right? And oftentimes these jackets are hardly ever worn. Sometimes they come like new with tags, right? So you can get something that is really great quality at a very low price. You have 4 months, so you can look around and see if there's something that fits you. You can make sure you can return it and get that. So that way you can get something, that's really nice quality, really special, really nice fabric, feels really good, is, fully canvas, it's just elegant, and you can get it on a really low budget. Otherwise, I would say, maybe try, if you want a really good fit and want to make sure that it works, and if your body needs it, go made to measure. You should be able to find some tuxes starting at like, $1,000. I'm sure there's cheaper ones, but then, you make compromises on the fabric and all that stuff. So yeah, something to kind of check out. And then, shoes, I always say, try to spend as much as you can, and again, you can find these things online. Oftentimes, unused shoes at a steep discount. So depending on where you're at, there are options. We also have a good video on like how to actually, buy eBay and how I search and how I approach it and all that stuff. So check that out if that's something you're interested in. Should I buy a watch to wear with a tux? Asks Sahil. I think we addressed that. You do not need to do that, but you can if you want. If you do, I suggest you get something like that matches the metal of your studs and cufflinks, right? And so I would say round, black flat gold or silver, a white dial, black dial, not too much, no dive watch, no Swatch, no Apple Watch. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Johnny Boy, I heard it's forbidden to be married with a black tie in a church. If so, then what to wear at a wedding as a groom? I think I haven't heard this. Traditionally, black tie is something that is worn in the evening hours. So if you go to England today, people still often wear like a morning coat if it's a day wedding. And then in the US, people wear tuxedos all the time in churches, outside of churches, and sometimes the ceremonies are like 11 a.m. They still wear the tux. So it's something that, you have to decide if you were the groom. If your church says it's forbidden, that's one thing, then you have to make different arrangements. I've never heard of that. I'm also not I got married once and not in a church, so it's like whatever you want to do. Ethan Shavarin, suggestion for after the live event, to please edit by adding a split screen to show what you're talking about. Videographers, show what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's alive, right? So you have to understand. I don't know what questions there are going to be, and so I'm just sharing my knowledge. So the videographer has to go, in the back end, find the right picture, find the right things, and then show it. So it's much easier said than done. It's like, I don't know what you ask me, the videographers don't know. So yeah, keep that in mind when you have requests like that. Hubert Jenkins, Reservoir 2, says, can I wear opera pumps with a standard tux, or is it too much? Yes, you can wear opera pumps at all times. It's more of a mental thing. There was a time when I thought, oh, opera pumps, it's a little too girly, I can't do that. Now I like wearing them, and if you're at a point where you're like, oh, I feel like I can only wear maybe Oxfords and stuff, okay, that's cool too, but you're not making any mistake by wearing an opera pump with any type of tux. Bruce Lee, hace 22 años, 22 años. Okay. Can you send a shipment of cufflinks and studs to Mexico? Yes, we do ship to Mexico. Now, when shipping abroad, there's lots of costs involved. Like, we're charged a higher credit card fee, yada, yada, yada. But there's also like customs and duties and all that stuff. We calculate all of that. We make sure that the price you see when you check out is the price you get. We also adapt to your local currency. So there's no things there. Other options are, there's freight forwarders like myus.com, which can often ship things much more inexpensively to you than we can. And that is an option. If you want to, ship stuff to them and then they ship it to you, it's a little more complicated. You don't know exactly what you're going to pay. But yes, we do ship internationally. We do ship to Mexico. Gogor says, started wearing suits this January, always getting compliments. Thank you for making me. Wish you the best. Thank you. Johnny Boy says, I've been told Barathea is the suit fabric itself, not the satin lapel fabric. No, Barathea refers to a weave. Satin refers to a weave. Can you make a suit out of Barathea? Absolutely, right? You can have a Barathea material made for your suit and faced with silk. The Barathea you find, in our collection for evening wear, or that you sometimes find on the lapel, is then made in silk, right? Very few people would make a Barathea silk suit. Is it possible? Absolutely. Will it last long? No, it won't, because it's the friction is not good in your pants, for example. But I don't know who told you that, but that's what Barathea means. Milivoy Glavovic says, what about overweight gentlemen styling? If you're overweight, if you're bigger, you just need to make sure that you get stuff that is bigger. And for our cummerbund, we have like adjusters here. So you see I can open the button, I can make things bigger. There's also flexible material. We also have a short cummerbund, so we'll try to get people there. If you have a waist of 55 inches, you may have to get more custom stuff. We have bow ties going all the way up, I think, to like 18 or 18.5 with a single end bow tie. We'll be adding an adjustable bow tie. And in case you just joined us, we're having the launch of our 4 black tie bundles. The idea is we curated it for you, so it's easier to find a good match. They all come at savings that you will not see otherwise, so you get a really good deal, especially during launch week, which starts today and ends on Sunday, end of day, our time zone. You can check them out in the bundle section or the evening wear section. We have a minimalist tie bundle, starting right now at like $255. Then we have a kind of classic bundle, which is $510 right now, down from $635. And then we have the luxury bundles, which are at $1,400. So there's no coupon or anything you need. You just go to the store and place your order. What do you think about Ralph Lauren tuxedo? I like Ralph Lauren Purple Label stuff typically. They oftentimes have a range that's really out there, an unusual pattern jacket or stuff. I always like them. They have sometimes really bold shawl colors and double-breasted things. So they're also quite expensive. So for that price, you can have something made bespoke in London on Savile Row. But Ralph Lauren has good styling. If you can pick it up at a lower price, definitely go for it. I have some old ones, Purple Label made in England. I like them very much. I also have some modern ones, Purple Label made in Italy. Also very nice. Oftentimes they have different fabrics. Now you can get linen dinner jackets and stuff like that. It's hard to find elsewhere. Okay. Diego Alejandro Acosta Pacheco asks, hello, I wanted to know if you ever heard of Ask Oki and his suits, and what do you think about them? Yes, I've heard of, Ask Oki, and he has his style, and I think he's very much in that lane. It's like my way or the highway, and personally, I think, style is about you and what you like to wear. I don't think there's only one way to roam. I think there's many different ways. And even in a classic style realm, there's many different things you can do. He is a very specific like 30s style white cut. And while I think it it looks great on him, I don't think it will look great on everyone. So if you like the style and you think it will work for your body, great. If not, I think there's lots of other things. That being said, I've never had first-hand experience with his garments, so I've never worn an Ask Oki suit. I don't know, how it fits or what's special about them or what is not. So I can't speak to that. Brandon, how many times a year do you typically dress in black tie? It depends. If I go on a cruise and I like to dress up, I wear black tie, as much as I can, and it's fun. If I have more invitations, I'll have more events. I also wear it sometimes for photo shoots and stuff like that, which doesn't really count. But I would say overall, anywhere from maybe let's say 3 to 15 times a year. Wait, you can wear colorful dress socks with black tie? Yes, you can. Ultimately, right, black tie is formal and often looks good because it's rather minimalistic, right? Look at this here, right? I have white, I have black, and midnight blue, but the midnight blue and the black, they're in the same kind of color family. So it is formal because of that simplicity. So I always say, if you want to add color in your black tie outfits, typically I say, choose one color accent. Could be your boutonniere, right? It could be, some people go with a cummerbund and matching bow tie, but then keep everything else toned down. It could be just your pair of socks, right? Maybe if you want to have your socks and your boutonniere match cool. Maybe your dinner jacket is black watch tartan and you have some green, or you have a burgundy velvet jacket, right? Then keep everything else simple. Don't go overboard and wear yellow socks and a red bow tie and a green cummerbund. That is very gaudy very quickly, but you can do stuff. Are bib fronts out? No. You can, if you like the traditional bib fronts, they were typically made, that you wear them with a waistcoat, because the insert only goes in a certain area. But if you like that look, go for it. I don't think they're out. Love my mohair jacket. Great purchase. Yeah, excellent. I hope you didn't wear that shirt right after your shave. No. Yeah, if you shave and you have some blood, then you get blood stains on your shirt. You don't want that. I notice a lot of original Marcella 1950s inner shirts don't support shirt studs, but rather have regular buttons. Should these shirts be avoided? Traditionally, you always had studs. If you go with, there was a time when they were well, studs, I want to be more minimalistic, and then you have what is called a hidden shirt placket, meaning you don't see the traditional shirt buttons. That's also an evening shirt option that you can have, right? For example, with their minimalist type button, there's no studs because people may not have that. You always have cufflinks. An evening shirt should not have no cufflinks, but you can have a hidden shirt placket, so you don't see the buttons underneath of it, but you don't want to see your regular buttons of an evening shirt. Yeah, the Aesthete says, personal question, do you ever wear black tie at home without entertaining, like a Tuesday night? No, I do not. It's, I play with my daughter, go to bed, sit around. I'm not just wearing it, for my own pleasure, so to speak. Maybe if let's say, I'm testing stuff out. I have a photo shoot, I want to test something. That's a situation I can see still wearing it, or I had it for a photo shoot, and I don't want to change. Yes, then I have it. But typically, no, I wouldn't do that. Jörmungandr, first of thank you for all that you do. You're welcome. Always a comfortable nook of the internet. Do my options for accessories regarding black tie and sort of boutonnieres and watch, or is there more to be had? I don't understand your question. Do my options for accessories black tie? I mean, you can, I would say accessories that you see outward. I mentioned before, having a hat, having an overcoat, having white gloves, having an evening scarf, for example, right? These are all things. Now, if you're at a, 30 degrees Celsius, 86 Fahrenheit, are you going to wear gloves and a scarf and overcoat? No, it's too hot, right? You kind of adapt. In Europe, in the winter, it's when you wear black tie a lot, the balls and whatnot. Then yes, you can have an overcoat and all that stuff. If you want to learn about all the details and all the options you have, check out the black tie guide. It's all answered there. Can I wear a French cuff shirt with jeans? I mean, you can do anything. You can drink a poisoned lead water. You can take a gun and shoot yourself. All things you can do. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So would I wear a double cuff shirt with jeans? No. Zach says, what do black tie events typically celebrate nowadays? Have the events they celebrate changed over the years? I would say typically people have black tie events when they want it to be special, they want it to be fancy, they want to kind of elevate their event, right? And so sometimes you have fundraisers that do that. Traditionally, like balls had white tie. These days, very few balls have, a white tie component to them in the US. If you go to Vienna, for example, Austria in general, you see a lot of white tie events still, right? And people do that and it's fun. But it also depends on the cultural surroundings where you're at. I like to wear a tuxedo when I go to the opera, or even like to the concert hall, right? It's fun. And you have people there basically in like a tracksuit next to you, and you have to be okay with that. That's just, you can't, change them. And today everything is more casual. So if you wear a black tie or something like this to the concert hall in Minnesota, for example, or the opera, you will definitely stand out, right? And I'm okay with that. I like that. I like dressing up. I think it looks great. And so these are things. I'd like to have more friends who kind of host black tie dinner parties, right? And I think if you feel like that you don't have enough of that, I suggest, you start hosting them and just say, hey, I'm hosting a black tie dinner party. And if you can't cook, you can even, hire a chef to do it. But I guarantee you, we'll have lots of fun and make sure you take photos and share them with us. We'd love to share it and create that culture of, like black tie events. And it's like, if you feel like you don't have enough black tie events, just start them, doing it yourself. And I think we at the Gentleman's Gazette plan to do stuff like that too. We did like, the Belvedere Bash where we had dinners and we had people come, and there was, the Sartorial Club where you can go and dress up and have fun. I've been to some of those dinners and stuff. So anything that, helps maintain this culture of dressing up alive, or keeps it alive, is something that is very dear to our hearts, and we always want to support that. How do I convince my class, high school, to wear a formal outfit for dinner, but they only want to wear button-downs and trousers when it's required to wear a tux? Thoughts? Panda 77, 777, I don't know if convincing is the right way to do it. You can just tell them, hey, this looks really cool. But for some people, they're just not there. And then if they feel like they're kind of in a Halloween costume, they're not comfortable, that's not easy either. All I think you can do is just show people, having a good time wearing that stuff and how cool it looks. I think that could be something. But ultimately, let them make their choice. Someone says I have a DB Elijah LaPlaza. I have an ivory DB dinner jacket from Suit Supply. I got a fab deal on eBay. It's pure bamboo, but it's on a linen style weave. Is it lightweight, but looks more like a Barathea with rubber line lapels? Okay. There is no such thing as a linen weave. There is material and there's weave. And most materials can be woven in any type of weave, right? That's something to keep in mind. Then, when things say, this is made from bamboo, this does not mean that someone takes bamboo and takes the strands and weaves something out of it, right? They take bamboo, they break it down chemically, they create a cellulose fiber, which you could also create out of paper or trees or whatever, right? So chemically, on a chemical level, it is not anything unique to bamboo. You just use the chemical compound as the base material and then create something. So I think bamboo is in my opinion, like an overrated fabric. I don't think they're very nice. But hey, if you have one and you like it and it's great and you got a good deal, awesome. I think I'd wear it too. You know, if I like the cut and everything, would I go and seek out bamboo? No, I wouldn't. Can I wear it in winter? I think we already covered that. Not traditionally, but I probably would if I like it. Can I wear a light beige dinner jacket to a black tie event as OG crafter? I would do it. I think it's very nice, and why not? You know, will you stand out? Definitely. You know, and so you have to be comfortable with that, and people will look at you, and you know, some may think that you want to be dressed better than that, you want to stand out, that you like the attention. There's all sorts of things that come with wearing an off-white inner jacket, but you know, if you enjoy it, go for it. Al Martin says, so do you think that oversized tuxedos from brands like Balenciaga will ever be socially acceptable? Will it still ever last? I mean, cuts have changed to some degree over decades. No. I think, you know, anything that's super extreme will not last a whole lot, right? I mean, it's just, you know, if you have tuxedos with super slim lapels or super wide lapels, anything that's extreme will not be a long-term investment. But sometimes, you know, if you've found your style, you know, sometimes you see people and they look like they're straight out of the 90s, you know, they have the big slacks, they haven't upgraded their style, they just kind of, you know, wore something in the 90s and then they retired and just keep wearing the same stuff. I can see that, right? I try to, you know, I like a classic style, but if I look at my wardrobe today and 10 years ago, there's definitely a change, you know? I also like to change and upgrade and see what's new. So yes, these extreme fashion brands, I personally would avoid them at all costs. So yeah, thank you very much. You're welcome. Penguin Edit says, MOP studs and cufflinks or onyx. So MOP stands for mother of pearl, right? So if you traditionally, you would see, you know, like old dress sets, you had mother of pearl, for example, or like abalone, which was like a darker stone. These were typically entry-level things, but yeah, you know, if you like mother of pearl, that's fine. Onyx is a black stone, so you know it works. Even sometimes we will also you have like diamond studs in cufflinks. You know, that's typically a time when you can go bolder. So if you have a set, it's nice to have a set, you know, where it's all matching. It's very special. You can find like cat's eye options or like, you know, star sapphire, or that can get really expensive because the stones are so expensive and you see so many different stones that all match in the look, but it's really nice. I think, you know, it's an opportunity to dress up, and you know, I've had black tie outfits where the dress set, you know, is by far the most expensive thing of the entire outfit, because, you know, gold prices these days have gone up tremendously. So, you know, retail prices for full dress sets can be, you know, $15,000, $20,000 depending on what stones you have, no problem. So, yeah. I have a wedding to go to on Friday. Our wedding's black tie. Is there a way to make black tie more Western? Asked by somebody else. You know, for a wedding, as a guest, you always follow the invitation. And if they don't have a dress code and you're unsure, reach out to them, ask, you know, what do you want this to be? The last thing you want to have happen is like you dress up in a tuxedo, right? And then, you know, distant relatives that went right to the wedding come up to you and congratulate and ask where your bride is. You know, you don't want to steal away the attention from the bride and groom. If they just want, you know, a hillbilly hick wedding or whatever they want, you know, if they want a costume wedding, if they want a, you know, a sequence wedding, like go with the flow, ask what they want, let them have their day, and don't make it about you and your outfit and how you stand out. So I would not just wear black tie to a wedding when it doesn't ask for black tie or stuff like that. I would probably also, you know, try to take something more subdued, you know, like let's say it's black tie and the groom wears a black tuxedo and you wear the white dinner jacket. You will stand out in the sea of black tie, you know, and everyone will look at you, which is not the point. It's about the couple. So, you know, yeah, keep that in mind. Are there any alternatives to tuxedo overcoats? Yes, there are. You know, there's capes, for example. You know, in there's a Spanish cape, and probably the person I know who wears it the most is Henrik Kjell from Copenhagen. He doesn't have overcoats. He just wears the cape with everything, but you can also wear it with evening wear. So it's a very kind of cost-effective way to do it. I would say, if you are like, I have an evening overcoat, it's like satin face and all that stuff, but I only wear it when it's cold in the winter, and I like it and it's great. But let's say, you're like, well, I can't afford to have just an evening overcoat. Then I would say, get like a midnight blue, double-breasted overcoat, peak lapels, flat pockets that you can tuck in, and so you can get like double duty out of that. You can wear it every day, you can wear it with business suits, but you can also wear it in the evening. I've also seen people wear like, fur coats in the evening or stuff like that. So, yeah, having like a tweed overcoat with a tuxedo is probably not my first choice. But when it's really cold and it's all I have, I'll wear that. I've even wearing people wear like trench coats with black tie if that's all they have. Yeah. Can we wear gold cufflinks with a tuxedo? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's a lot of I would say traditionally with like white tie, oftentimes you saw white metal, like platinum, that kind of stuff. So you can also wear it with a tuxedo. It's a personal choice. I think it's a skin tone thing. If you have like darker skin or more tan, gold looks really good. Silver can also look good. It's a personal preference. Black tie for musicians, says Siddharth Sarangi. As a musician who may need to wear these frequently, what should we do different than the average person who wears black tie once in a while? Very good question. So as a musician, I think, what's really important is your range of movement. So for example, I've seen like tuxedos that were made bespoke for musicians where they did the fitting like this, so it was perfect when you stood like this. And then that gave you the full range of movement that you need for your outfit. Also, I think, when you're a musician, you're sometimes in places where it can get really hot. So I would get a fabric like a high twist that's very open pore and something that wears cool. I would also not get a glued canvas. I would get, or a glued interlining. I would get a canvas that is hand stitched, so it breathes more. And then, you also need to have probably more different tuxedo shirts, right? I saw, for example, we were in Vienna with a whole great series there, and we visited, different places. And we saw like really cool, innovative white tie things. One of them was kind of a linen shirt front that with the idea that you don't have to have it starched every time. Others like combined an evening shirt with a waistcoat, so it's just one garment. So there's cool stuff that you can get that may be really helpful for you. If you have to wear white tie as a musician, in Vienna, for example, they all wear white tie. I would say talk to the Viennese people, because they are, it's very much alive there. They have the Viennese Philharmonic Orchestra and all that stuff. So you find a lot of stores and people have that knowledge there, and having all that stuff specifically for musicians. So I would check it out there. Otherwise, if you go made to measure, it's probably not going to cut it. If you want the sleeve pitch, you have to go bespoke with a tailor and say, this is my instrument, bring it all, and then make sure you get something that works really well for you. Who knows, maybe somebody else like this one is. I would like to respectfully seek your advice, sir. What footwear would you recommend for the main guest at a party wearing a cream-colored suit? I would prefer an option other than black. That's not really a black tie question, but I would say, yes, the black contrast in a cream-colored suit is quite, strong. So you could get a more pastel-colored shoe. I think a light tan, like London tan, would look really good. For an evening party, if you wear that, you're already kind of standing out from the crowd and not following traditional conventions. So that's probably what I would go with. Nolan Robertson says the Marine Corps has an option for a cape and a mess dress and formal uniforms. Yeah. Sadahito Oda asks, what is your general opinion of civilian mess jacket for black tie? It's something that has pretty much fallen out of favor. And a mess jacket is something that has a top body cut more like a tailcoat, a morning coat or an evening tailcoat. It's more of a body coat. If you look at the back, it has a very specific seam pattern, and it often ends in a point in the back. I think it's very elegant. You know, it's open in the front. It looks a bit like a tailcoat. So if you have one that fits, you know, oftentimes it's only worn in military context, but if you can find one, I think it's really cool. You know, it's different, but traditional. So I think it's very cool. I'd wear it. Alexander Gisting, well, good evening from Copenhagen. Speaking of, I don't know what else you wanted to say. Belfast says, what kind of perfume would you pick for such an event? Good question. You know, for an evening event, I'd like to go with like an elegant scent. So I think High Heel White from Roberto Ugolini, for example, is a choice I like. I also like Quattro Rosso or Dicescente Rosso. You know, they're bolder, more unusual scents. You can also wear an Oxford, for example, and ultimately, you know, scent is very personal, right? I may smell something and I may have, you know, fond memories of a great party I was at, and you may smell that same scent and you may be reminded of the abuse you experienced as a child. So it's a very personal thing, but this is how I like to choose scents. So in case you missed it, we launched curated black tie bundles that you can find in our shop. You all get them at a really good price. It starts from all the way down to $255 for the entry-level bundle, over $510 for the classic black tie bundle, all the way to luxury bundle, which is $1,400. These are less expensive than they normally are until the end of day Sunday, Central Standard Time. Check them out, see if it's something that works for you. But you know, getting these bundles makes sure you get something that is curated, that all works together, takes the guesswork out of it, and makes you enjoy your black tie event more. Al Martin says, how do you care for patent leather shoes and tuxes in general, like any after use? Yeah, good question. You know, patent leather shoes, there's special patent leather care. Don't use traditional shoe cream on your patent leather shoes. I typically, you know, I just make sure if there's, you know, if there was a garden and I just make sure that they're clean basically the next day when I put it away. Same for, you know, jackets. Sometimes I look at them and there may be a stain or something like that. Sometimes I don't notice stuff, and then the next time, like the button here came off in the pants, having that sewn back on, stuff like that. You know, maybe a seam opened or something, and you have to kind of fix it, so to speak. So that's something I would take a look at, so to speak. Also, you know, sometimes your tuxedo shirt or stuff, you know, because you dance and you party and stuff, you know, there can be stuff that is maybe ripped or needs to be replaced, maybe more so than with regular stuff. So that's something I would say do. Ahmad Sabul asks, can you say my name? I tried. Sorry if I butchered it. So with that being said, it seems like there's no more questions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for asking good questions. I hope it was valuable. If you need more black tie guidance, we have the in-depth black tie guide. If you need accessories, we get you covered. We get the broadest selections you can get in you know, different materials, where it's like satin, velvet, barathea, moire, all that stuff, we get you covered. Someone says, Sadahide Odo, assuming that one has unlimited options and budget, what boot could work for black tie? I would go with a black, you know, Chelsea boot, because it's very sleek, long, right? So that's what I would get. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you for tuning in, and see you around next time. Okay.